So I actually had these dreams last week, but I had two dreams in a row the same night. And then as I was waking up, I heard a couple things, which usually for me, when that happens, when that happens, I have like frequently when I wake up, God will give me a word or a phrase or a sentence that helps me understand the dream. So I know it's connected, but I'm not seeing the connections here. And I'm assuming the dreams were also connected. So let me just go through it as quick as possible. The first one's pretty short. I dreamed that I was with my husband, Benjamin, in a restaurant meeting with a prophetic couple I had been listening to for a long time. I was so excited and amazed to be there meeting with them in person. And I'm a stay at home mom. I have a special needs kid. Like, even going to a conference to actually hear any of these people in person has just never been feasibly possible. So, um, I would love to do something like that. But so I'm just like super excited. And we've like sat down and had lunch together or something. And then I look up and I see, and I don't remember who this was. In my dream, I knew who it was, but I don't remember who it was. I look up in my dream and I see Lana, who was, I'll get the second, and her husband. They've come in. They've been seated in the section next on the other next section over from where I was, and I'm just like, I have to go speak to them. I just can't. So I excuse myself after a minute from the conversation I'm in, and I go over there and I introduce myself to Lana, and I honor her for being the first person to introduce me to the true prophetic heart of God. Because, I'd seen a lot of voices out there and it was just like, something is just not right here. And she was the first person. It was like, this person is really in tune with God. So I'm like, I can't believe I actually get to meet her. So I come back to my table and this other couple is gone. And I feel bad immediately. I'm like, oh, I walked out on, this meeting we were having. And my husband is like, okay, he said, okay, these people, just a second, I should just read it. I hadn't had a chance to tell them goodbye properly either, which has always kind of been a big deal for me, much more so when I was a kid, but I just felt badly that they had left and I hadn't really gotten to say goodbye. And my husband's like, well, they left you a note. They had to run. And so their note expressed how much they had enjoyed meeting with me and said they were sorry they had to run. So then back to back with this dream. And I mean, I can stop if you want. But back to back with this dream. I have another dream. And in my dream, I'm in the place where I grew up. We had a 20-acre patch of woods farm-ish in Texas. And there was a creek that went cut across the property in two different directions and had a crossing at some point, whatever. So I'm I'm down at the creek on the one section right after this really huge storm. So it's at high flood, and this creek is dry most of the year. But certain times, if it rains, you've got a 4 or 5 inch trickle. Once in a while, you get a major flash flood, and we got 6 feet of water. So we're at high flood, which doesn't happen very often. And there's this man with me that I don't really know, but he said something about me not knowing the terrain. And I respond that I grew up on this creek and at one point knew every inch of it. And to prove his point, he said, well, I bet you didn't know there was a rose bush right there. And at this point, we're on a different section of the creek where the main crossing that we would cross from one side of the property to the other was. I respond that, of course, there are wild roses everywhere. They're mostly pink and have 4 to 8 loose petals. Then I look behind me at this particular one and see that part of it is up against a tree or a wall, which there was no wall there, but it had been put up against something and had been covered with plastic like a mini hothouse and had bloomed much earlier than the rest of the bush. When I look at the flowers, I realize they don't look anything like roses, and even the colors, they're kind of like gray and lavender, are different. I reached under the plastic and gently touched them, amazed and wondering what they were. The next day or the day after, I'm part of a bunch of orchid groups. I saw this picture of this orchid, a variety I don't have, that I realized was the flower I saw in my dream. But the orchid was like more of a black and purple, not the gray and lavender. There's a version that's similar, but like I've never actually seen one of these particular flowers in real life. And I could tell didn't look at all like a rose, but it's growing on this rose bush. So I did find out that it's actually an orchid. At some point coming down the hill, so, you know, there's this whole thing with the flower. So then I'm coming down the hill above the creek bank, and it's dark, and I stop at the edge of the bank because I don't want to slip in. Then it's like the lights come on, and I can see the bank is as slick and sloped as I thought it would be. I stepped a bit on the edge of the bank and immediately started sliding. I wasn't scared, but I caught myself before I got to the water, holding on to a root at the edge. I then hear what sounds like a freight train. And I look to see a massive tree completely uprooted and laying on its side, roots completely free of the dirt. And that really struck me because when a tree gets uprooted in a storm, the roots are covered in, like, you can hardly see the roots, they're covered in dirt. But it was completely bare of dirt. It was just, you see the whole lacy root structure. It's being washed down the creek on the flood, making this loud noise like a freight train. I'm in awe of the size of the tree and the amount of noise it was creating. Later, up at the house, Benjamin, my husband, said he had heard the sound and he could hear it for a long time as the tree traveled down the creek. So then as I'm waking up, I heard, "Pray for Donald." And I understood it to mean Donald Trump. And then the word subchorionic hemorrhage. And a subchorionic hemorrhage is where the placenta separates from the wall of the uterus early, and it creates a pocket of blood, and you will bleed during early. Sometimes it can cause serious issues. Sometimes it's just annoying. But that, just in case you don't know, that's what it is. So I was just like, okay, somehow these are connected, but I am a little lost.
So. Wow. Interesting.
One other detail, I got a message from a friend in South Dakota who had also had a dream about a tree being uprooted and the roots were completely exposed, and it was making this horribly loud noise as it was being pulled up. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'm like, that's like just like what I was seeing in my dream. So
well, the idea of the tree being uprooted is the whole idea of it kind of harkens back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the tree in Daniel. And of course, right, he was cut down, and then there was a collar and a chain put around the stump. Basically, the idea of limiting growth, but it wasn't uprooted. Uprooted means to remove forever. It's like the idea of death or of, dehabilitation, never being able to return to your position, which was not what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. But certainly what I believe is going to happen, and I think we're getting that word a lot lately, and we're starting to see people even getting arrested, or spouses of leaders getting arrested for just stupid stuff, But I think we're starting to see that in particular related to, leaders in the prophetic, probably. I think more of that's going to happen. There's a lot of people. Not a lot, I would say, but let's just say there's a fair amount of people in the evangelical world that are really struggling right now. They're going through major stuff in their marriages and their families. There's a lot of stuff that, is not being talked about. And, there's a lot of shaking that's happening. And I think we're seeing that in the political world. We're just beginning to see that a little bit, but I think it's going to happen more and more. But Neil, what are your thoughts?
I agree to what you said. I think the first part, when you're going to the restaurant and you meet actually two prophetic couples, right? The one that you're actually eating with, and the other that is in a different section. I agree with John. I think there's you want to honor both of them, but you have to get up from the table that you are to go talk to the other ones. And while you're gone, the other ones leave. And as John was saying, there's a lot of people in the prophetic who are being shaken out of their place of honor, work, whatever you want to call it, and that they're not coming back. So I think it's an encouragement to, these people are not always going to be with you, but God's going to be with you all the time. They're they're the creation. He's the creator. Follow the creator, not the created. Don't follow the guru. I think it's just an
definitely.
Or just an encouragement for you to know that God's the one who's got you, not the prophets.
Yes.
The whole piece of taking you back to your childhood and the creek running that's at high flood, it's kind of like in the days of Noah. And the tree falling over is kind of interesting. You said that if you look at the tree root system, anyone that's come out of the ground like that, it resembles a placenta.
Yes,
the
it
roots,
does. You're right.
The roots give life to the tree, and the placenta gives life to the baby. And I think this is kind of pointing to the whole abortion issue. That things are being ripped out.
Oh, wow.
And it's a scream. It's a scream with the tree. It's a scream with the baby too. This is a noise
that's
right. It's just horrid in God's eyes and ears.
Wow.
And so I think it's
wow.
So I think the part of pray for Donald and the separation that I think that pray for him, because not that his placenta is being ripped out, but that he's going to be dealing with this issue very soon when he comes back. Did I just say that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there.
So I
That's
think
interesting because my friend in South Dakota who had the dream about the tree being uprooted, she's also been having dreams about full-term abortions, like watching them in real time, and she's just like horrified.
We're the only country that does that in the world. Even Europe they limit it to, I think it's 12 weeks or something. We're the only ones that take it to like the 4th trimester. Abortion.
It's just called murder.
Which doesn't make any sense to me at all. Yeah. So I think that you have a part in this, in preventing it. I'm not sure what it is, but I think that your part in this is to not go to the prophets, to go to God and find out what his goal for you or his destiny is for you in helping the whole situation with the abortion issue. I don't know what your feeling is for that, but I think it has something to do with it. And the orchids and the roses it's almost like they're cross-pollinated. It kind of goes back to Christians and the Jews. They're the vines. We're just a grafted in piece. And, you've got an orchid that's in a rose bush, the Rose of Sharon, but you've got this beautiful flower that's on top of it. It's nothing like a rose, but it's still got the vine that it's been grafted into is the root that we belong to. And that's the root of Jesse. And that's God's grafting us into his family. And in order to grow a family, the babies need to be born.
Yes.
Sounds like yours were.
Okay.
Go, Mom.
Just a minute. Yeah. Yeah, he just brought in a gallon pitcher full of eggs. That's to show me. Yes. Okay. Well, that puts a lot of things in perspective. And yeah, definitely that's something that God has just showed me over and over. Just, come to me. You can, I'm going to send you a lot of confirmations through different people, but, don't listen to them, listen to me. Primarily.
And this issue is like a raging river.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
really
and it's,
from many perspectives.
I personally have lost like a dozen children. And so just I can't even hardly even talk about the whole idea of like, why would you willingly do that? And so like, it's something that's very, very like painful for me to even think about. So yeah, I will definitely have to pray into that more because that is, wow, intense.
Wow. So good. Thank you, Neil. That was awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I think God really wants to encounter you. I think that's part of the whole thing too. Just the idea of growing growing in your seer gift and in the prophetic, and the things that he's showing you are pretty important. So,
yeah, the revelation is going to come directly to you, not to people you look up to or look at.
Yeah.
You are the new prophet.
Well, thank you. Yeah, he keeps telling me that. He's like, you undervalue who you are because you've never thought of yourself as worth anything. So dealing on that one.
Yeah. Be encouraged.
Well, thank you. I am. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.